Welcome, and today I wanted to focus on the Bronx in New York. And originally, the legendary Mudflood channel, whose channel is now deleted, it has been for some time, but he made an excellent video on this topic, and I don't know, it might have been a year and some months since I've seen that video. And recently on YouTube, I've seen some other recommended footage. Very interesting. Perhaps the AI has become savvy and knows what would interest me. And it was showing footage from the 1980s in the Bronx, and it absolutely blew me away. And it brought me back to a strange, eerie feeling I had as a child growing up in Atlantic City. And just always seemed to be construction and giant holes or piles of rubble. And that's exactly what I was seeing in these 1980 pictures and video footage from the 1980s. And I did make a kind of crappy video due to technical glitches. It was all over the place. I was forced to stop and start and just really lost my focus. And a small segment did involve the Bronx, and I did scratch the surface. But today, I was talking to my one employee, and I don't know why, but we were talking about the Bronx. And I asked her if she'd ever seen old pictures of the Bronx. Not having been overly indoctrinated, still very open-minded, I showed her pictures in the 1980s. And these pictures don't really do justice as these 1980 videos that are to be found on YouTube. For some reason, they seem to have a stringent usage policy associated with them. But nevertheless, we can explore this in these pictures just fine. And I'm sure you're getting my drift. A hill in the South Bronx. And it's not just that these buildings are destroyed. It's that they're surrounded by complete rubble. And these are just the buildings remaining. What was destroyed? What were these targets? And I'm sure everyone watching these videos has an idea. And then what is standing is in complete disrepair. And they were showing the insides, and they're just a mess. I mean, they, in many cases, will have to be demolished. And this, to me, being very obviously the signs of what we might see in Virginia in the Civil War. Again, the same condition of city. And yet here, this is in 1861, and we see the same exact thing. Cities and buildings completely burnt out, and piles of brick and rubble. And again, we're to believe that cannonballs did all of this in the Civil War. And okay, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. At least they told us there was a war. And again, not seeming like the ruins of cannonball fire, a pre-aircraft time. But again, they did tell us it was a war. But what of this? And an entire city in this condition. And the interview was talking about how the children just grew up among this rubble. And it was just a very normal thing. This city was in complete disrepair, trees growing in the sidewalks, and that was a normal part of life. This was a normal place to grow up in. And here you go, the South Bronx. Really, all I'd ever heard about the South Bronx was by KRS-One, the hip-hop artist who grew up in this area. In fact, this is said to be the birthplace of hip-hop. And I never imagined that the city may have possibly looked like this. No different than what we would see in World War II, cities in ruin and rubble, and again, at least this is supposed to have been a war, even though I don't believe so. But to think that in the 80s, not too far from New York City, we have the Bronx looking like this, and they tell us it was burned, but having the same appearance as any photo in any point in time that has succumbed to war and heavy bombing. And in present day, one would pay $500,000 to live in the Bronx. And yet right under our noses in 1980, looking like a complete war zone and abandoned, and similar to what we're seeing in Detroit and many other cities where they're selling homes for $1. It's as if these things have never been needed. We didn't build them. We don't need them, and they continue to lie in ruins. Now, in the case with the Bronx, naturally being so close to New York City, it was just a matter of time before all these homes were either demolished or rehabbed. And I encourage you to dig into this a little more. A fascinating exploration. It seems as if the timeline just keeps getting closer and closer, and realizing that the narrative in its falsities has been written much more recently than we originally thought. Okay, and let's just go through the lie here for a minute. The Bronx is a borough of New York City, third most densely populated county in the United States. It has a population today of about 1.5 million. About a quarter of the Bronx's area is open space. The name Bronx originated with Swedish-born man who establishes the first settlement in 1639. And to this day they're saying the Bronx contains the poorest congressional district in the United States. There are, however, some upper income as well as middle income neighborhoods. And here we can have a little look. And very interesting. The Bronx saw a sharp decline in population, livable housing, and quality of life in the late 1960s, 70s, and 80s. So really, all the rubble, just think back to all the rubble that we saw, all of this should have been built in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and yet by the 60s, they are even talking about the decline, the sharp decline, when things should be moving forward. No, the Bronx is going backwards. Of course, this story is just trying to explain the ridiculous, and this culminating in a wave of arson. In addition, the South Bronx saw severe urban decay. The Bronx experienced some redevelopment starting in the 1990s. So late, and just ridiculous to conceive that it would have been built up, and you saw the debris. I mean, let's just have a look at this courthouse, for example. Okay, here is the courthouse, like anything we see anywhere in the world. And so we're to believe that this courthouse is built, and the whole city is built, and then suddenly there's a wave of arson and urban decay for 30 or 40 years. And completely ridiculous narratives, not worth reading. And here that Bronx County Courthouse opened in 1914. From 1900 to 1929, there was a boom, with a population growth by a factor of 6. from 200,000 to 1.3 million. There you go. About 1 million people in a 30-year period leading up to 1930. And then the Great Depression and post-World War II saw a slowing of growth, leading into an eventual decline. And here it is. From 1950 to 85, the Bronx experienced a decline, and really until 1990, not really getting their act together. And bridges and tunnels. 13 bridges and 3 tunnels connect the Bronx to Manhattan, and 3 bridges connect the Bronx to Queens. These are from west to east. So yes, just to add to all this, having time to build tunnels, pretty massive feat, and to this day it has about 500,000 housing units with a median value of $371,000, and the per capita income is $19,000 on average. Really not making sense then, and barely even now. And here's a little look at the inside dome of the Bronx Community College. Very interesting. And if we weren't already in the know, we would say very suspicious. And here's another look at the Fordham University. Of course, a little castle. And clearly, and of course not surprisingly, a past civilization. The same civilization existing in the Bronx, why wouldn't they? But what's interesting is how this story was pretty much ignored, and how closed the eyes still were in the 80s, and even early 90s, and how nobody would question how the whole city could have been built up with horse and buggy, and pretty much lying in ruins by 1960, and in many cases still in somewhat disrepair. The original Yankee Stadium, clearly renovated, and here she is in older times, looking more in the style that it must have originally been intended, seeming as if this is a future site for train tracks. I'm not sure. Now there's flags on top of it. This is a pre-knowing what to do with this building picture, even pre-road, just barely using it, and now a little bit more serious. In this picture, the flags go up, any trace of Antiquitech comes down, and by the next generation, nobody's asking questions. Sorry about that. What else should we look at? Have you learned that you affect your reality? That your thoughts affect everything around you? And this is almost a spiritual element. And in modern terms, we could call it a matrix element of a higher order. But in this very physical plane, there's other rules that are imposed on us. And these impositions encourage us to play a game in which we know is rigged. And of course, probably the majority still think the game is fair, or may question it, but choose to play it nonetheless. And why participate in a system that in its very nature is fraudulent? Are you obliged to tell the truth to a liar? And when we consider the commandments, and thou shalt not, everything, but seeming to leave out what shall thou do, this would be akin to going shopping sent by another person with a list of everything that you should not buy, leaving out what you should, and expecting you to return with those things. And again, if a system is fraudulent, what happens when we partake in it and we act honestly within a fraudulent system and expect to be treated fairly? Why would we expect anything other than an unfair outcome? And when considering the straw man element, or the fictitious person that we also participate in, it too is a completely fraudulent system, and one that was sure to crumble when we consider the words used in contracts and in laws that govern our realm. The very words are fraudulent. Heavy usage of verbs, and verbs are left for interpretations. Verbs are not real things. You can't hold them in your hands. And yet we have an entire system built on verbiage. And to me, this is one of the first most important parts to realizing that the truth shall set you free. And the truth most simply being that everything we know and have been taught is a lie, and the whole system is fraudulent. And if you choose to take part, it's your choice, and you can expect to be treated unfairly by a system that is unfair in its very nature. While all the powers that be, both wise and infinite, and foolish and ignorant, prevent everything that I love from occurring in this world. And it's a good thing I don't put much stock in this world. Like Jesus, who said, if you love this world, then you don't love me. And I don't love this world. This world is a pile of greedy garbage and a complete illusion. This world is beautiful with God, and within and with the animals. Perhaps it is the vibration from all the falsities that we are fed in this realm, beginning with the geography and the false language and alphabet. Everything is in search of our peace and our peace of mind. And that's the only thing worth fighting for, if you ask me. For without a peace of mind, there's nothing. How can one enjoy anything without first a peace of mind? And yet nothing is necessary to have a peace of mind. And yet this is the greatest challenge in life. I live far away in a remote home that I built myself, and I thought moving to the middle of nowhere would bring me some peace. Big oil companies have come in and put in a road, and people come out and shoot their guns, and neighbors let their dog run wild and kill my chickens, and government officials harass me and want to take more than they should have any rights to, dictating what and what I can't do. But I would rather fight for such things, to live in my own way, and I will fight for my peace of mind, which doesn't mean actually fighting. It just means upsetting people that don't respect your wishes and wish that you would conform to their wishes. And if you upset such people, then that's fine, because their needs were selfish. Instead of looking for a peace of mind and feelings of joy from within, they seek from without, and they seek to take from others, like a child. And I do recommend avoiding a mortgage and building one's own house for a fraction of the cost. And if we do decide to play in the system that is rigged and flawed and false, then we should completely play the game the way the people on the top play the game, not scared on the bottom, and take a big chance and pull out a big loan and shoot for your greatest dream. Start a company, whatever it may be, and if it doesn't work out, file bankruptcy, because that is your right. And that's what the people on the top do, in the billions, and have no shame. And yet for some reason people have some sort of stigma about exercising their right even in this corrupt system. And perhaps every 7 years one should do this. There are no prisons for debt, and the people on the top use it freely as a game of monopoly. And bankruptcy is simply a financial reset that has been given to us every 7 years. Very similar to the old times in the Bible where the debts were forgiven every 7 years. I believe it was called a Shemitah. So that's it. In a perfect scenario, I would love to interview someone that did grow up in the Bronx and get their take on this. But for now, I think that's it. I do thank you for joining me, and do have a blessed day. And please like, comment, and subscribe.